I'm really excited to be here. We've got Bill Reed and John Boecker, two of the speakers of a great session, and we're going to learn all about what they talked about, and hopefully some of this information is going to translate across to you. So Bill, John, thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Nice to be here.
Yes.
Name, title, rank.
Name's John Boecker. I'm an architect and a partner in a company called Seven Group. We are sustainability and integrative design consultants.
Very cool.
Kind of ditto, Bill Reed, Integrative Design Collaborative and Regenerative Communities Group, of which we're both a part, working on large systemic engagement on the planet.
Great. The name of the course?
Remembering the Patterns of Living System.
Remembering. Right?
Explain this, remembering.
So the idea is that our whole science and approach to education has been fragmented and reductionist. The word science, in fact, means scissors, to separate.
Okay.
We've done that very well, and that's a very important thing. However, we've forgotten that everything's connected. And quantum mechanics taught us that when you impact one thing, it impacts something else. Or if you start reducing it, if you start dissecting the frog dies. How are you going to learn about how the way the frog works? It's not just a bunch of pieces, it's a living being.
It's a frog.
It's a frog. And that frog is connected to the swamp that he lives in, or she lives in, and the birds and the bees.
It's connected to the rain, which is connected to the roots of the trees that suck up that water from the roots.
So it's a boundaryless system. And that kind of freaks people out, that you have to work at this, my gosh, I can't even design a bathroom.
The scale gets very large at this point, right?
So the key is remembering that humans are members of that system, not separate from it.
And the system is not separate. All the elements of the system are a whole system. So how do we work with a whole system?
How do you apply that to architecture?
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go, because you cannot work with a property. What the smallest unit of design needs to be a watershed.
Right.
And you heard Dana talk about the Earth as a water planet.
Right.
That's principle number one.
Water is the way life flows. It's the way nutrients flow. Without earth, water, air, and sun, we don't have food. So that's the level we need to be dealing with sustainability, whether we're on a residential property or in an office building.
So what are the questions that we're asking then? If we're going from nouns to verbs, and I'm designing something or we're going to build something, what are the questions that I'm asking that are different in this process to get to these verbs?
So if we want to look at it, if we want to try and discover, which is really our role, in a development process, when we understand development as deveiling, discovering the potential of a place, then we need to start asking, well, what is the role of this place in its larger nested system?
Okay.
Okay. So for example, Bill has a great project that it was the development of what was an alluvial plain. So let's alluvial fan, which was literally for thousands and thousands of years, millennia, time out of mind, a living bridge connection between the river and the mountaintops.
Okay.
You know, it was 3,000 acres of what now currently is
row crop agriculture,
industrial farmland. Yeah.
Which is where you should not put a development because it's a farm, right?
Well, actually, now see, here's the interesting
that's
thing.
A really
is the
interesting
question, what is humans' role? Because this comes back to our role on this planet. Is our role to conserve and avoid? Is our role to create potential and emerge? So this is why this is not limited to rural or urban. It's all things.
So within the context of the development.
Yeah, let me give you a practical example there. It turns out that because the farms were actually cutting off all the flow, the dendritic pattern of rivers and streams that connected the mountains to the stream, and all the fish that were used to go back up, salmon were there, used to take nutrients back upstream because that's how nutrients go back upstream. That was broken. And people think, well, farming is so natural. In fact, it's actually an industrial process that actually cut off that connectivity. All the water was used for irrigation. Those fish were dying. So now the question
By the way, all the chemicals that were put on agriculture
too.
were all completely polluted the river. So it was actually doing precisely the opposite of what it had done for thousands of years as a place.
So, this developer wanted to put up 1,000 homes. We think it's terrible, and maybe it is, but in this case, it wasn't.
It was an opportunity.
It was an opportunity because how to reconcile human life with life there by bringing humans back into that place, because the farmers were going bankrupt. You couldn't grow crops on an economic basis. You could from a subsistence farming, but not on an economic manufacturing basis. You could put, and I don't know if 1,000 homes is the right number, 600 homes. So as long as you clustered them in areas where those streams weren't, allowed these and restored those and stopped using the water for farming.
And let that water move through the system again.
Through the system, because the residences would only take 10% of the water as opposed to 90% of the farming took.
Interesting.
You actually have the reconnection.
And if you could in fact cluster the homes in ways that they were on sort of the higher places,
there you go.
Thereby leaving the more alluvial soils that were filled with nutrients as, let's say, both habitat corridors and organic small farm functions
polycanopy farming
could indeed feed the residents and feed the flora and fauna, so that they could now move and reestablish that connection between the water and the mountain. Now you have humans interacting with, on a daily basis,
well, that
life.
sounds like a more exciting place to live.
And creating higher potential.
I mean, this goes to biophilia and your relationship with nature. Where would you rather live, right? What we've discovered in development is if you're near woods and streams, that property has more value than the one that's in the big empty open.
That's the way the community was looked at it, is that we have zoned 1 house per 40 acres. We'll just allow these little ranchettes to happen, and that will make it work. But they cut it off. They continue to fence it off, right? So the connectivity is lost. Unless we understand that purpose or the essence of that landscape and its role, we're going to make bad decisions.
So
we're going to run out of time here.
So say this real quickly. Okay. There is indeed a replicable process for discovering the patterns of place. Now, again, it's different in every place, but there are some principles that can be applied to make that series of discoveries that can inform the design team.
Is that the why questions? Is that part of that?
Ooh, wow.
I mean, I was kind of hoping that you're going to real quickly.
It's part of it.
In that process
what are the
of
questions?
how do I design? You know, what you said someone comes to you and they say they want to build a building, and you said why?
Yeah, that's at a much more simple level, because often we don't know how to answer why unless we understand the place first. So our entry point into any project is to understand the patterns of life in that place.
So step one is understand the patterns of life in the place, and step
convey that through story, because story is how we tell complex relationships.
Fair enough. And the next step then is to
then take the principles that are unique to that place, like for instance that landscape that we gave you is that. Soil is the fundamental basis of life in our place.
Okay.
So healthy soil is incredibly important. That means we need to make very sure that we're taking care of that soil.
And the nutrient transfer
water,
in this case.
So because we understood the pattern and the landscape, now we understand that the soil is actually something that we really need to be
and the water needs to be re-engaged,
and the water needs to be
re-energize it.
Yes. So that way, if you are aligning those principles of that place and adopt them as the principles for your development, you can in fact improve the health of that place, but then you don't stop.
Yeah.
Because the place is constantly changing.
Because this is where key performance indicators come in.
Okay.
This is where you actually can start measuring it.
Okay.
How many fish are we having? What's the quality of the water? What's the quality of the soil?
Yeah, or the steelhead trout.
So now we go back to the left brain.
That's right, because we work, it's not that we're avoiding the left brain, we just have to approach it as a whole brain. It's not either or, it's both and.
You have to approach it as a whole brain. Before we wrap up here, real quickly, if there was something that you could say out there to a remodeler or a builder or an architect or developer, you know, this is the one thing that I wish you would do in your process that would be different. Bill, what would it be?
I would ask the client to be engaged in the ecosystem they're part of, whether it's on a 6,000 square foot lot or 20 acres, and how can they make it better and more healthy.
John?
I would ask them to envision the place that they want to be in and create it.
Envision the place that they want to be in
and create
then create it. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the time.
Sure.
It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill.
How you doing, Michael? Good to see you.